The moment you explain yourself, you've already lost. In power dynamics, explanation is rarely clarity. It is usually permission for another person to judge you, to interrogate you, to place you beneath them in the social hierarchy. Think about it. When someone attacks you, questions your worth, laughs at your standards, or treats your time like it's free, what is your first instinct? To defend, to justify, to prove you're not that guy, to show you're reasonable. That instinct, it is destroying your power without you realizing it, because cheap is not a money problem, it is a status signal. It tells the room you can be pressured, accessed, negotiated down, and emotionally moved. In this video, I'll show you Machiavelli's ancient strategy to flip this dynamic instantly, so your presence carries weight, your boundaries carry consequence, and your value stops being up for debate. And there's one darker mechanism behind being expensive that most men never see. We'll get to that in a moment. Machiavelli wrote in an era where power was not motivational, it was survival. In Renaissance Florence, reputations were built and destroyed in public view. Alliances shifted overnight, and softness invited predators. The lesson that modern society refuses to teach is simple. People do not treat you based on your inner intentions. They treat you based on the price you signal. In The Prince, Machiavelli revealed a brutal truth about human nature. Most people are moved less by morality than by outcomes, by fear, reward, and perception. The world respects what appears rare, what appears dangerous to disrespect, and what appears costly to access. Modern society hides this knowledge because it is easier to manage men who feel guilty for wanting dominance. It trains you to be endlessly agreeable, endlessly available, endlessly explainable. It calls that being a good person. But under that language sits a quiet agenda, keep you cheap so you remain easy to use. Here's what cheap behavior looks like in the real world. You respond instantly to everyone. You overgive to prove loyalty. You tolerate disrespect to avoid conflict. You negotiate against yourself. You do emotional labor for people who offer no loyalty in return. And then you wonder why the room doesn't fear losing you. Machiavelli would not be surprised. He would call it what it is, a failure of strategy, because the masses, most people live in a fantasy where fairness governs outcomes. They believe if they are kind, they will be valued. If they explain, they will be understood. If they sacrifice, they will be rewarded. That is the mythology of the powerless. You are not here for mythology, you are here because you've seen the real structure underneath: social dominance, frame control, and status economies. You sense that the world is not divided into good and bad. It is divided into players and pieces. And if you're still listening carefully right now, you already understand what others refuse to see. The game is being played on you, whether you consent or not. But there's something even darker about this. And it explains why being expensive makes people nervous, why it triggers them, why it exposes them. We'll get to that in a moment. Principle 1. Control access, availability. Is cheap. The first tactical principle is controlled access. If people can reach you anytime, interrupt you anytime, and extract your attention without cost, you are not respected. You are used. This is not motivational. This is dark psychology. The human brain assigns value using shortcuts. One of the most powerful is the scarcity heuristic. What is limited feels valuable. What is abundant feels disposable. Cheap men broadcast abundance. They are always reachable, always flexible, always ready to prove themselves, always ready to explain. Expensive men broadcast scarcity. They respond on their schedule. They decide who gets access. They do not chase. They do not compete for attention. They select. Now, most people think this is arrogance, but here's where it gets dark. Controlling access doesn't just increase value. It forces other people to complete the story in their mind. When you are not instantly available, they start asking, what is he doing? Who is he with? What does he know that I don't? Why does he move like he's in demand? And that mental activity becomes investment. When someone invests mental energy into you, you rise in their internal hierarchy. Not because you begged, but because their own brain built your status for you. Machiavelli wrote about perception as a weapon. Power is not only what you do, it is what people believe you can do and what they believe it costs to get close to you. Source: concrete example, modern life. A man is in a workplace where a colleague constantly throws subtle jabs, interruptions, sarcasm, little public tests. The cheap response is immediate defense, explaining intentions, proving competence, trying to be liked. That behavior signals, "You can pull my strings." The expensive response is different. He does not rush to answer every poke. He pauses. He lets silence stretch. He answers only what matters. He refuses the frame that he is on trial, and something shifts. The colleague doesn't feel debated. He feels denied access. The attacks lose fuel because the target refuses to participate. That is a power dynamic law. What you feed grows, what you starve dies. Practical access control, what it looks like. You stop replying instantly to low-value messages. You stop over-explaining your decisions. You stop being the emotional customer service desk for everyone's anxiety. You schedule your availability like a man whose time is expensive, because it is. Pattern break. Everything you've been taught about being nice is incomplete. It trains you to give access before respect. That is backwards. In social hierarchy, access is earned, not granted. And here's the first open loop you must hold. Controlling access is only the outer gate. Most people stop here and think they've become high status. They haven't. They've only become harder to reach. Now, most people stop here, but that's why they fail. There's a second layer, and it's where frame control begins. Principle 2. Control the frame. The one who justifies submits. The second principle is frame control. Machiavellian strategy is not about winning arguments, it's about deciding what the argument is. Cheap men fight inside other people's frames. Expensive men refuse frames that diminish them. This is the darker mechanism behind explanation. When you explain yourself to someone who is attacking you, you accept their hidden premise, that they have the authority to evaluate you. That is, submission disguised as communication. In manipulation tactics, the most common move is the courtroom trap. They accuse, they demand justification, they pressure you to prove innocence, and the moment you start defending, you validate their role as judge. Expensive men do something colder. They reverse the hierarchy. They do not ask, "How do I prove myself?" They ask, "Who are you to question me like that?" Not with emotion, with structure, with calm, stoic dominance. What weak people do, they try to be understood. They chase approval. They negotiate their standards. They explain until they sound uncertain. What powerful people do, they state. They decide. They move on. Machiavelli wrote that people are persuaded by what they see and feel more than what they analyze. Your calm refusal to enter a degrading frame communicates dominance faster than any speech. Source: concrete story, high-stakes social test. A man sets a boundary. "Don't speak to me like that." The other person laughs. "Wow, someone's sensitive. Why are you so dramatic?" Cheap response: "I'm not sensitive, I just meant." Now he's defending his masculinity inside their frame. Expensive response: silence, then a single sentence: "Speak with respect," or "Don't speak to me." No heat, no performance, no debate. The attacker now faces a choice: comply or lose access. That is frame control. You define the rules of engagement. Status check-in. If you're still watching, you're already ahead of 90% who clicked away because this makes them uncomfortable. This separates those who consume content from those who use knowledge as a weapon. Pattern break. Most people think power is loud, but true social dominance is often quiet. Loudness is frequently compensation. Calm is frequently certainty. Now hold another open loop. Refusing a frame is only half the strategy, because some people don't stop when ignored. They escalate, they provoke, they spread narratives, they recruit others. And that is where it gets truly dangerous, because the next principle teaches you how to weaponize perception itself. The next principle is where it gets truly dangerous. Principle 3, signal value, standards create price. The third principle is value signaling through standards. Expensive is not luxury clothing. It is not showing off. It is not talking big. It is something colder. Your standards create your price, and your price dictates how people treat you. In power dynamics, people test what they can get away with. They test your time. They test your boundaries. They test your reactions. They test your need to be liked. Every time you tolerate a small disrespect, you teach them the rate. Every time you accept last-minute changes, you teach them the rate. Every time you stay in conversations that drain you, you teach them the rate. This is why Stoicism matters here, not as a trend, but as a strategic posture. Stoicism is emotional containment, and emotional containment is what prevents others from buying your reactions for free. What weak people do, they try to look valuable by talking about their value. They announce, they explain, they brag, they perform. What powerful people do, they let standards speak, they let scarcity speak, they let consequences speak. Now, most people think signaling is superficial, but here's what's really happening. Humans do not discover your worth like scientists. They infer it socially. They watch how you treat yourself, then they mirror it. If you discount yourself, others follow. If you hold the line, others adjust. Concrete example. Dating/your life. A man meets someone who cancels repeatedly, replies only when bored, offers crumbs of attention. Cheap men interpret this as a challenge and chase harder. They invest more, hoping to be chosen. That is emotional poverty. Expensive men interpret it as data. They do not punish. They do not beg. They withdraw access. They move like a man who is not starving for validation. And here is the dark psychology effect. When you stop chasing, the other person loses the ability to control you with uncertainty. Your calm exit becomes a mirror that reflects their own low effort back at them. This is frame control combined with standards. You do not get me at a discount. Warning, this is where you need to be careful, because standards without discipline become theatrics. If you announce boundaries but never enforce them, you don't look powerful. You look performative, and performative men are easy to manipulate. Pattern break. The goal is not to be liked. The goal is to be respected enough that disrespect becomes costly. And another open loop, standards signal your price, but price means nothing without enforcement. Some people will comply. Others will challenge you just to see if the expensive identity is real. But knowing these isn't enough. You need to understand how they combine, because the final principle is the one most men avoid. Principle 4, enforce consequences. What you tolerate becomes the law. This is the forbidden knowledge. Consequences create reality. Most men fail here because they confuse mercy with weakness. They think being understanding makes them noble. But in social hierarchy, repeated mercy without consequence is not nobility, it is an invitation. Machiavelli wrote the line that polite society hates, it is safer to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. Not because fear is virtue, but because fear is reliability. Fear means your boundaries are real. Source: expensive men are not cruel. They are consistent. They do not explode. They do not rage. They do not rage. They simply remove access. This is why most people can't handle this truth. They want the benefits of standards without the discomfort of enforcement. But the world does not reward comfort. It rewards structure. What enforcement looks like in real life: if someone disrespects you, you end the interaction. If someone repeatedly wastes your time, you stop scheduling access. If someone undermines you publicly, you do not debate. You correct once, then distance. If someone only values you when you are useful, you stop being useful. Pattern break. Forgiveness is not the same as continued access. You can forgive internally and still treat access like a locked door. And here is what Machiavelli never explicitly wrote, but understood. People do not follow your words. They follow your pattern. Your pattern teaches them what you are. Cheap men teach, I will stay. Expensive men teach, I can leave. That is the deepest social dominance signal on earth. Now this is the climax. Access control, frame control, standards, and consequences are not separate tricks. They are one machine. And when you run the machine correctly, you stop being a man, others negotiate down. But knowing the laws isn't enough. You need the system. Here's the unified strategy, Machiavellian, surgical, and rooted in human nature. 1. Control access so people feel your scarcity. 2. Control the frame so people cannot put you on trial. 3. Control standards so your price is visible without speech. 4. Control consequences so your price is real. This is frame control at the highest level. You are not asking the world to value you. You are structuring reality so the world adapts. Now, some will say this is manipulation, but power doesn't care about labels. The world calls it confidence when a high-status man does it, and arrogance when a low-status man does it, and arrogance when a low-status man does it. Same behavior, different rank. That is the point. Social hierarchy changes the meaning of everything. If you want a reference point, this is why the 48 Laws of Power resonates with so many men, because it describes what polite culture hides. The laws aren't magic. They are observations of recurring patterns in power dynamics, appearance, scarcity, reputation, and control. Strategic thinking is simply refusing to be naive. And Machiavelli is the origin of that realism. Source reality check. The world is divided into players and pieces. Players set frames, prices, and consequences. Pieces explain themselves, negotiate their worth, and hope fairness saves them. Which one will you be? Open loop final. In the next section, the implementation will start small, so you can apply it today, then it will escalate into the advanced discipline most men avoid. Here are 5 steps, from easiest to most advanced. Step 1. Today. Stop instant replies. Respond on a schedule. Not to play games, but to stop broadcasting need. Availability is a status signal. Step 2. Delete explanation from your vocabulary. Replace "here's why I" with "this is what I'm doing." Short, calm, final. That is frame control. Step 3. Set a standard in 1 sentence. Examples: let's keep it respectful. I don't do last-minute changes. Speak clearly or we don't continue. Standards must be simple enough to enforce. Step 4. Enforce with distance, not emotion. No lectures, no arguments, no drama. Consequences must feel automatic like gravity. Step 5. Advanced. Become comfortable being misunderstood. Cheap men chase clarity to protect their image. Expensive men protect their position. They let people guess. They let people project. They stay composed. You now know what 99% of people will never understand. Your life improves when you stop trying to be fair and start being precise. Recap the transformation. When you control access, you stop being disposable. When you control the frame, you stop being interrogated. When you raise standards, you stop being negotiated down. When you enforce consequences, you stop being tested. Most people will watch this and do nothing. That's why they stay powerless. They keep explaining, keep tolerating, keep discounting themselves. Then they call it bad luck. If this resonates with the part of you that's tired of performing for others' approval, you know what to do. Subscribe, because this channel is not entertainment, it is strategic thinking for men who refuse to be managed. And remember the line that started this: the moment you explain yourself, you've already lost. The choice is yours, but remember, ignorance is not bliss, it's slavery.